so many people may know B-Simone from Wild 'N Out. Of course, her work on, on social platforms. She's been I guess you could say social media comedian
Mm-hmm.
that grew her audience organically. She broke down, this has been viral, I believe today. She broke down about basically her finances breaking down, and now that she's struggling financially, she's not as liquid as she used to be, which I think a lot of us can relate to, particularly in the industry. This is why this actually stood out to me, because it wasn't so much of like, oh, she's up here crying about how her lifestyle changed, but also being two people who work in the industry where you do see a significant amount of money per month.
Yeah.
And when it does, you do hit a rough patch, and where it's kind of one of those things where it's not as much work out there or as many gigs to book
Yep.
as an artist, then you do understand, where she's coming from. So I want to play, let me bring it up, the clip. And she got emotional. This is on her podcast.
Got everyone. Yeah, rewind it a little bit. Oh, here you go. It's a little finicky.
The name of her podcast, I can't remember the name of it now, though.
Yeah.
Can't remember it.
Yeah.
But
Go check out. You can Google B-Simone.
It's like the budgeting, you see how I am. Every little thing I never been like that. We were in Bloomingdale's yesterday. I'm like, we have to go to H&M. Yeah. Like and I notice it now, just nitpicking. And it's not even I just don't have it like to spend the liquid. Yeah. I'm used to having liquid. I'm used to seeing a certain amount in my account, but it's just my finances.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
so Rel, the reason I wanted to bring up this clip while Rel was still here, Rel worked on Girls Trip. Was it
Yeah.
Girls Trip?
Yep. Girls Trip.
Which was
Who was on it? Little Kim, Maya,
B-Simone,
B-Simone, Pretty
V.
V. I know I'm missing one person. Oh boy. And I apologize.
Rel was one of the lead editors on the series.
Um it was so long ago.
And
Yeah, reality show. Was it? Wait, it might not have been Ghost Girls Trip. Hold on.
the Girls Cruise.
Oh Lord. I'll look up B Simone. So when you work on so many different shows, I forget
Yeah.
some of the shows that I work on, like the name of it.
Yeah, it was Girls Cruise.
Girls Cruise. Okay. So who was the last person in my I might not even be forgetting somebody. I might have actually got him. Oh, yes. Chili.
Chili was on there.
Chili, yes.
So this is the show Terrell worked on.
So Girls Cruise, yeah. So it was actually sad that it wasn't able to go further than one season. I think it was really cool to see the women kind of and the problem is when you have a reality show that doesn't have a tremendous amount of drama or cat fighting, like they don't like to promote that. This was like just them out actually like having a good time. And there was some little drama here and there, but it was just a cute show. It was just
It
a
was a
cute
cute
little
show.
escapism show, and it's cool to see some of the iconic women that we grew up with watching let their hair down. And crazy enough, I got to meet Lil Kim. She came to the office.
And she really is
Actually little.
Lil Kim.
She is really, really little and really nice. She was really
And I
nice.
mean, we know the 90s and the early 2000s was like run by these three.
Yeah.
If you're talking about music, outside of Aaliyah, at that time, Destiny's Child was still trying to grow.
Yeah.
When they were like, she was in one of the biggest girl groups of all time with TLC. Of course, Lil Kim was one of the biggest selling rap artists.
Rap artist.
Not just female, but rap artists. And then Maya was one of the biggest R&B singers.
Yep.
Of the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's kind of cool to see like these three unite, and to also know that like they weren't, I guess Maya and Lil Kim were friends, like, but they weren't really friends with Chili, right? If I'm not mistaken, or they knew Chili, but who wasn't friends with Chili? One of them, right?
I feel like I'm trying to think who was the friend with Chili. Chili was more of an outsider.
So of course, like Rel said, on the cast, Maya, Chili, Lil Kim was the star. Maya, Chili, B-Simone, Pretty V, Tiffany was Lil Kim's friend, right? And
Yeah.
then in Char.
Char, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I'm not, no.
He's a socialite.
Yeah, I don't remember Char.
Yeah, Tiffany was the one had the long-standing friendship with Lil Kim.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah, sorry, Char, I don't really remember. You might not really, I might have not put you in too many of the scenes. My bad.
Anthony Sylvester was the EP.
Oh man, he definitely was. He must have been in the field because it was is her name on it? Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, I worked with Ashley. Um, yeah, I didn't meet Anthony and Shelly. I worked with Shelly quite a bit.
So it was cool. Like Ralph said, it was a positive series, which is probably why unfortunately it didn't take off like it needed. It could have.
Yeah.
And I think it could have, but basically, so Pretty V and B-Simone were affiliated with Wild 'N Out.
Yep.
At the time, they were both stars, so they came on as friends, and
yeah, they were
of course
friends. Yep.
And it was, you know, again, it was basically a series about women finding self exploration and sisterhood. And Ralph's executive producer on the series, Ashley McFarland Blue, that's kind of her thing. Like she really likes self exploration type style series. And I do think that's incredible that those are things that she really enjoys to do as a storyteller, which is hard sometimes to be able to really get those shows greenlit.
Yeah.
But so B-Simone, this is when as she was growing. This is 2019, right? She was growing. She was on Wild 'N Out. Everybody knew her from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, now she got shortly after that is when she got canceled in 2020, I believe, for her remarks on a podcast.
I can't believe it was that
Let
long
me
ago.
see, because this is the article that she got canceled. So the name of her podcast is Let's Try This Again. She, of course, has 6 million followers on Instagram or IG. She was canceled during the pandemic for making a comment of she doesn't date men that have a regular 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was really speaking along the lines of more blue collar because there's a lot of professions that clock in and clock out, but she was just including there's doctors that clock in and clock out.
Yeah.
There's shifts, so the lawyers. But in particular, she was saying, or any other, there's a lot of high earning professions that clock in and clock out. But I think she was in her mind saying more blue collar, working class professionals.
Yeah. That's what most people took it as.
Still, to me, a job's a job.
Well, even then, like I
don't ever discount nobody for making a hard-earned living. That's all I got to say.
So a garbage man can make up to six figures. That's
Right.
always what we grew up knowing. There's cops that can make up to 6 figures depending on where they're at in career. There's a lot of blue collar jobs that you can't end up making 6 figures. So, I don't know if she was necessarily attacking the because I didn't listen to the whole statement. I don't know if she was attacking the amount of money you make or just the mentality that she's looking for.
Yeah, she wanted specifically entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
She wanted hustling entrepreneurs is what she specifically called it.
Now that's someone that could, and I like I said, I'm not sure if she explained it well enough because you can get a hustling entrepreneur and make less than $50,000 a year, and you can date someone who does a 9 to 5 who makes double that, maybe even almost to triple that. So I wonder what her intention was with that statement, but yeah, we know the internet's intention.
So basically, now that she's recently invested in an app called LTTA, and because of her investing in that app,
I didn't know.
She is not as liquid as she used to be. She at one point was bringing $1 million a month, and now she's bringing 10,000. Now I know people are sitting at home, like, seriously, $10,000 a month is a lot of money. But when you're, exactly. But when we can speak on it, when you have seen in the upwards of even the amount that is low for her in your account per month. You don't even see it in your account like that at once too. It depends on like how you're getting paid, right? So if we have a gig, we could bring in pre-taxes between $10,000 to $20,000 a month. That is not what's in. We all are taxed individuals, so we know that's not what's coming. It's not what's actually going into our account. Now I know it's still a lot more than, what some people are ever see in their profession. I understand that. I'm not taking that away from anything. Please let me clarify that. But because you have to offset your finances, you have to offset it because of tax purposes. You always have to, you have to offset your income.
Yeah.
You end up, and particularly, I think a lot of people don't understand that with entertainment. With her being a personality, she has a team that promotes her constantly, right? So she has a publicist, an agent, a lawyer, a manager.
At minimum.
At minimum. So because she has a 4 to 5 person team that is representing her, everything she makes. So if her income went from 1 million to 10,000 a month, those people are still expecting between their 5 to 15%. Normally it's about 10 to 15% a month from that $10,000 income. And that could be her income pre-tax.
Yeah.
So after taxes, she might be bringing home between $6,000 to $8,000. They're still taking their tax out. If that is her living room that they're in, she ain't in a small crib.
Well, if you pay attention, she says she has assets.
Yeah, she has assets.
I mean,
assets and jewelry.
Have in jewelry. The fact that you have it in jewelry is a whole different. I mean, there's other issues
in
at
here,
play,
yeah,
other than that. But yes, she's probably has high expenses in general, right? Like a high mortgage, because she probably bought a house when she was doing well, not thinking that the money would ever slow up. But being in entertainment, which Shayla's going to talk about, you always have to be prepared for the money to slow up. Trust me, because we've experienced the money slowing up
in the last 2 years. I mean, significantly. Like it is crazy. And it's not just, it's so easy. Like we could sit here and say, because we're Black individuals in America, like the money slowed up. I have seen white coworkers who have not worked for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's a whole conundrum. It's so many different things, one after the other. It started with, of course, COVID, where everyone's career was affected.
Yeah.
Every business slowed up and suffered. People were furloughed left and right from different sectors within, within different sectors of work.
Yeah.
And then as we were starting to, and one of the things that Raul can also agree with entertainment too, when we're not allowed to film, that affects how much we're able to put out. Now, yes, I would say every creatives did rise to the occasion. People tried so many different things during COVID to keep entertaining audiences. There was, of course, projects in the can that still got edited and distributed by the platform. So we got to still see films, we got to still see new series, but there was a slower period, right? And where there wasn't as much content, which is why we got to see so much more content creation grow during that time.
Yeah.
But where every other sector kind of slows up, entertainment always feels it later.
Yeah.
We always kind of feel the after effects probably about 1 to 2 years after everybody else. So whereas the service industries and hospitality and travel, saw they, as things started to slowly open up, they could kind of, it still they're still regaining profits. Some places never survived, being down for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So where things started to open up in 2021 and in 2022, it was one of those things where, yes, we could all start to get back on location, we could start filming projects, but there were still people, writers' rooms were still kind of going. People didn't know if they were being greenlit coming out of that.
Yeah.
Because studios and networks and streaming platforms had to recoup losses. So in order to recoup losses, that means certain promised projects and series, that meant even if you were greenlit, you may not make it.
Yeah.
You have to already ensure that you're going to turn a profit first. You're going to give us a return on our investment. And those come with established IPs, series that were already in motion, already greenlit, basically projects that advertisers showed interest in early on, and they knew that they were going to see some of that revenue back that they invested into the project. So if they weren't going to see that right away, that's why you saw a lot of projects getting peeled back.
Yeah, I guess, real quick, I mean, you actually bring a different dynamic to this than I was actually thinking, because if she's talking about being canceled in 2020, but who knows? She could have been up for reality shows and they pulled back on them because of the pandemic, because they were canceling a lot of shows even then. So, during that time, it could have been with, what I mean, could have been that time period as well, could have affected her negatively, right? Like, not just being canceled because of things you said on the show, but like the whole industry in general took a hit, and you couple that with her being a little bit more of a high risk, um because the internet kind of turned on her. I just feel like, yeah, it could have been something like that as well, because Girls Cruise. I just thought about Girls Cruise, came out 2019. They may not have did a second season because of the pandemic coming, and it was like, well, why are we going to do Girls Cruise? It's not really netting numbers that we want. It might be on a bubble, but anything that was on a bubble, or anything that was about to get greenlit, was getting canned in 2020. So, and a lot of brands pulled back on investing in 2020. So
She also had a book too,
yeah, I know the book thing.
the Manifestation book,
Yeah.
and her comments on Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
protests. I mean, she was saying a lot of stuff. Oof. Okay, but
Yeah.
so that is one of the things that I know affects.
Oh, she negatively commented on the protest. Oh well, yeah. Come on, girl.
Yeah.
Come on, girl. Come on, girl. Man, I think, not to go off topic with this. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion, and sometimes when you're a celebrity, you feel like you need to give an opinion. But I feel like sometimes it's cool just to shut up.
It was 2020. It was a combination of factors. She was plagiarism.
Yeah.
And insensitive remarks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's when you feel you're pulling away from something. Like, I guess she was talking about, uh was it insensitive remarks towards the plagiarism, or was it towards
I think it was the Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives
See
Matter?
what she said, and I don't know exactly what she said.
Oof, oof, oof. God,
Now hers is a little bit different.
I'm trying to throw her a bone right now, man. She jumped out the window. Oh, they both know what they're saying. I'm trying to see what they said. Oh, Banks said, if you want change in America, register to vote. Okay, and what did she say? Oh, the statements. Okay, so you want to read the statement from?
So the statement for B-Simone in particular, because there was two comedians that I guess got canceled.
Yeah, Desi Banks.
Desi Banks, and then of course B-Simone, and her comments in 2020 were, "I'm God fearing." Okay, I'll just add this. Hers was this: "I'm God fearing. I have to." So basically, she spoke out about about how she believed that the rioting was not the best way to handle the anger felt after the death of George Floyd, and that people should not be complaining about how others decide to support the cause. She said, "I'm God fearing. I have to ask myself, what would Jesus do? Not what would an angry Black woman do? I am angry, but I'm also trying to be godly."
Okay, all right, cool. Go ahead. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because like, she did specifically mention angry Black woman. So I want
read the room. That's all I had to. She was not reading that room because they found.
Yeah, I know. All right.
If you hear any noise, guys, they're power washing today in our community. So
All right. So my issue is, even bringing up the term angry Black woman. That's a term, or a label that's put on Black women in general. So, like, regardless of what her perception of that was, like, I was cool with what would Jesus do? Okay, if you feel like you don't want to participate in the riots and all that, and you're like, what would Jesus do? That's cool. But then to say angry black woman is like, oh, but that's what the media is portraying any black woman in the protest, any black woman who's speaking out, any black woman who's supporting supporting the movement was labeled an angry black woman. For her to use that term to perpetuate that stereotype of black women, I think was the wrong term, wrong time, and a wrong approach. And so yeah, I can see how she got canceled. However, I'm gonna defend her this way. As far as I know, Desi Banks' career hasn't took a hit, but hers did as a black woman. And I think that's something that we have to remedy.
Desi Banks?
He's a internet comedian. I see him all the time.
Oh, it's a guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta stop letting the sisters take a hit.
So he gives a statement and his career's kept moving, and she makes a statement and she's canceled.
He went to Morehead State, really?
Morehead. Akinelli. Oh. Oh man, I can't believe that's actually a school. I remember when I was like, Morehead's a school? And
yeah, his comment was basically, if you want change in America, register to vote.
Now, his statement isn't as bad.
It's not as bad, but it we also know that the Electoral College is not probably the best voting system if you're talking about under marginalized voices being heard. And we also know there's a lot of other factors at play when it comes to voting. Unfortunately, we won't get into the controversies of all of it or whatever, but there's a lot of Black people in general tend to be skeptical of institutions in this country for very good reasons. It has not always been the kindest, and that is putting it very mildly, to people who were brought here on boats, forced into forced labor for free, taken away from their culture, their homeland, what they knew. And we can be up for debate for how we got here, why we got here, all this, that, and the third. But at the end of the day, it's like to, just say voting is the only answer, then you're discounting the people that allowed you to make money, Desi. There's a lot of people and a lot of people who were comedians. Bill Cosby, even though he's a very controversial figure, a lot of entertainers who were huge parts of the movement in the 60s.
Yeah.
Flying people in, to areas where they were protesting and marching. So, to just say, and because at that point they couldn't vote. So they knew there were other ways, constitutional ways, that they had to have their voices heard. So I think, and you could say that, but there's a lot of people now screaming about things they don't agree with in terms of this past, whatever, the state of our union now, and might have voted or didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, so it's just so easy to say that. And I think, we have to be very careful because we just don't understand people's lives and circumstances. And it's so easy to be in a position on your pedestal and not understand because Ron and I talk about this all the time. We'll watch series where a town keeps going, like Stranger Things is an example, where he's talking about why people just stay in Hawkins and all this stuff keep happening. And it's just like when people don't evacuate during storms, right?
Yeah.
Now, I agree with, like, in Stranger Things, it feels kind of ridiculous because you're like, well, dang, like a whole hellmouth is like, it's like
kids were disappearing. I mean, it was like, come on, man.
But I mean, it's just like with people that, particularly when you're talking about our communities, it's not as easy for us to evacuate and not as easy for us to leave places where there's natural disasters that plague that area. And also with the change in the environment and what's happened with, nature itself, there's a lot of things that just didn't happen with people growing up and their whole, like, in terms of nature, how nature affects their homes and lives, that didn't happen when they were younger. So they've lived a full life there. And it's like, now I'm like, I gotta leave because this. So I think that they both could have been phrased to be more sensitive. I do think from her standpoint, I'm going to look at it from twofold. I do understand from working in entertainment where you can be very liquid one moment.
Yeah, man.
Very, very, very liquid. and then super, super, super dry.
Especially the
Like
check she's
that.
probably getting.
And that's the thing. We didn't even see like the checks that she saw. And what we saw wasn't bad. You know, what we saw people can live off of very comfortably. But at the end of the day, it's like when it was basically another thing that happened in our field too was when the strikes happened in 2023, the Writers Guild strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike, which we were very, the Screen Actors Guild, which we were very supportive of in this household. It also, you know, people in power, which we have seen time and time again, no matter what field or whatever that you work in, people in power like to maintain power and control. And when you do fight back, there's a lot of resistance before there's breakthrough.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pushback. So even though people made significant ground in terms of the contracts that came out of that, the power was technically restored to the gatekeepers in this industry, to those that make the decisions of what's going to get made and what isn't, which means several hundreds of thousands of people were not or have not been working. Some since the strikes. He and I have both been blessed to have worked on series since the strikes, but it has not been. I mean, like Rel and I would at times have to say, okay, if we can't book now, can we jump on in later episodes because we are so heavily booked on a series already. And it's like, okay, we can maybe jump on another one. If you still have series available when I wrap on this one, I can jump on that. It don't work like that no more. You can wrap and know that you might be out of work for maybe the rest of the year. Maybe, you know, for a whole nother year. You don't even know. So I think it's one of those things, and I love Rel to death, but Rel's a very laid back person. It is one of those things where it's always been competitive, but like you can't be a laid back person anymore.
Yeah.
You got to be a dog now. Like it's now Hunger Games. It's now like if you still want to do this, you have got to hound people, you know. It's not one of those things where people are just like, you know, such and such, I want to get them on. If you're not in their inbox constantly, people just aren't thinking about you like they used to. You have to always be on their mind. It's wild. It is crazy how much has changed and how much now the people who are the creatives don't hold as much latitude. You do see it more on the narrative side of holding the power, but then they also still get to decide what gets made over there and what doesn't.
Yeah, my opinion on the B-Simone thing, one, I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I don't feel any real sympathy towards her situation. Like I'm sorry. Like
Oh, that was the other side of the coin, I was gonna say, but you're taking go
oh
ahead.
yeah, I don't really feel any sympathy because of she's made that type of money, right? Like she's made that type of money where you had excess money where, you know, and it sounds like it was just a mixture of bad investing and poor spending habits, right? Like it's one thing to have high expenses, another thing when you're saying my money's tied up in jewelry, right? It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I don't really have sympathy like her. And we're in the industry as well. So we're not, she can't, like, if she was to say, oh, I argue with you guys, it's like, well, we actually made a lot of money in the industry as well. And we understand that there's highs and lows, peaks and valleys. And, you know, I could say, or Shayla could say the wrong thing and our name gets passed around and we don't get hired for gigs. I totally understand that. We can get canceled just like she can get canceled. However, I think when she made this statement, she was young in her career, not understanding that something that we would understand after being behind the scenes for so many years, that you can get canceled. Your name is all you have in this industry. So with her, it was like she said this pandemic, Hollywood strikes, social media awakening with Me Too movements and George Floyd, BLM. It was just all these things happening all at one time that dog piled on top of her. But like you said, like well, the other angle you wanted to take this from was you did have the resources though to survive this onslaught. You did have that. You had the resources to maybe
Keke Palmer, just to kind of to compare that. Keke Palmer says she lives below her means. She said she always has, because I think you have to understand that there can be a windfall.
Yep.
And, you know, this is someone that's been doing since, you know, she's been active since she was a child. She's been an entertainer since she was young. So for her to understand that very early and to take those, you know, basically to learn that so early and adopt those spending habits is definitely very, and to also understand when to invest. Those are where we've made mistakes in investing in a lot of projects when we weren't maybe as liquid as we would have liked to have been. I would say like we were liquid, but not as liquid as we would have liked to have been in terms of what was invested X, Y, and Z. But we were always reinvesting in projects we wanted to do, not so much just we weren't investing in frivolous things. Like that's the funniest part. He and I weren't investing in trips. We weren't investing in things that weren't tangible investments. But I think the thing about it is that,
well, I can tell you real quick and hold your thought, because I think this is something I want to teach people too about investing in your projects. One of the biggest mistakes I make, and I'll hold on to this, is the fact that I invested in equipment before we had projects. So, and before we had people who can operate the equipment. What I should have did was invest in the people, right? You know, Shayla has learned this lesson. She mentioned this even earlier. Don't be the smartest person in the room, right? Like, and me and Shayla always end up being the smartest people in the room because we couldn't hire other people who had expertise in other things. So, like for example, buy a camera, and you know, of course, buy something. I'm gonna learn it, but then I'm the only person who knows how to use the camera.
yeah, we like, hire someone to
use the
be
camera.
a camera op or be a DP, and Terrell be showing them how to use it. And it's like, and their parents pay for very expensive film programs, so it was just very fascinating to watch that process. And we were thinking, okay, but I think, and another thing I learned too, I hired people for technical gigs that wanted to be filmmakers.
Yeah.
You know, when someone does not want to operate equipment and they specifically tell you they want to be a director or they want to be a producer or that, believe them.
Yeah.
Don't try to make them into something that they don't want to be.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of the things, like Rel laughs all the time about how we have cameras and I don't have a natural inclination to pick it up and shoot. And I do come from that old school, more like more people that are filmmakers do understand how cameras work, and like so they can develop that eye. I know when I see a cinematographer shooting something, whether I like it or not, I'm like, oh, this is cool, or I like this angle, or I like that. But at the end of the day, I didn't come from, you know, the training I had when I was learning production. It was like you picked the lane and you were in that lane. You didn't go into several other lanes that, you know, you weren't a jack of all trades and a master of none. So it was like, I think the thing about it is that you meet people where they want to be, and like Rel said, invest in people. And I think another thing too, like I agree with Rel on, like he said, where he's kind of also the comment she made about, you know, now she's got to go to H&M instead of Bloomingdale's. Well, girl, ain't nothing wrong with no H&M. I mean, there are people, like I remember when this whole trend came in, I don't know if it's like mid 2000s, I want to say, like maybe the 20 late 2000s, 2010-ish era, where it was called high-low dressing, where they would take a very expensive piece with maybe, I guess you would say if it was an expensive piece, I guess since she brought up Bloomingdale's, maybe a piece from Bloomingdale's or Saks or whatever have you, and pair it with another piece of your clothing was from an H&M or Forever 21 or something like that, and they would call it high-low dressing because you were pieces, one piece might be extremely expensive, another piece might be, you know, more inexpensive. If it looks good on you and it's not wearing you, and because you'll probably never see me be extremely fashionable on this stream, but I love clothes. I mean, Rel will tell you, it is my ultimate vice. I can't get enough of it. I love fashion. All you gotta do is make it work.
Yeah.
You know, a label is just a label at the end of the day. Yes. Do I love major fashion labels? I have, because I grew up around a mother that was always invested in fashion. She worked in fashion. So it was something that I grew up loving. But I also am very conservative. I'm very preppy. I'm not, I love what it's funny how all these things have names now because everything, it is interesting now, everything is so branded with the, because of younger people. And I look, I'm all with a good branding, like high five for that. But how it's now called quiet luxury, which is basically classic looks. So, very bold crew neck sweaters, fisherman, fisherman knit sweaters, basically what you would wear on a boat, beautiful, beautiful shorts. Culottes are coming back. I can't believe culottes are coming back. Bermuda shorts. That's considered cool to wear long shorts. Like, not frayed shorts aren't in this summer. Like it is funny to me, like boat shoes are popular again. And because Tyler, the creator, I remember did a whole line recently, boat shoes or deck shoes as they call them. And it's like they were fly. And so it is interesting to me because these are things I wore my entire life and got teased for being too conservative. I even had young people I worked with in New York on an experimental project that made fun of like me being too conservative. And I was like, that's just how I've always dressed. But
we gotta stop doing that in our community too.
That person wasn't Black. But
oh my God, really?
That was the orphan. So whatever it was, orphan, whatever. It was so many stories.
Right.
But I think the thing about it is that I don't like that was kind of, she kind of again, she does a lot of classification. Oh, don't do this, Black woman.
Yeah.
Please don't. Like, we have enough boxes we get put in. Like, to do the angry Black woman box, to do the like H&M, because H&M is not cheap to me.
Yeah, no.
Even when we, like you said, when he and I are working on a series and our monthly income is very good, it's still not cheap to me. Like
if you know fashion, you know how to put together something. Like you were explaining, high low and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I just think it's just like the comment that was made by the woman, whether that was a prank or not, with the Cheesecake Factory. I was like, Cheesecake Factory is not cheap.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just think it's all, like you always say, it's all relative.
Yeah.
And I think, we've got to get out of this culture of the price tag, because we're actually giving more people credibility for what their price tag is versus what their actual, like, we don't value knowledge in the society anymore. And that's really scary to me because I love intellectuals. I just think people that think and use their big, beautiful brains and discover things and are innovative and try new things, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Like a price tag, money can come and go.
As she knows. As she knows very well.
And so it's kind of like, okay, I'm still looking at her on this screen, which is why I'm pointing it.
Like you lecture like she your daughter. Listen.
You actually were able to influence 6 million people to follow your comedy on, to me, Instagram, which is a very hard platform to me to build an audience on because it's so oversaturated. But to say, oh, she's funny enough for me to stop, and comedy is hard. Comedy is like the hardest thing to me because I do, like any art form, I think is hard but particularly comedy, because it's so subjective. So you could say, one person can think this person is hilarious and another person cannot think, and it could be like 10 people to this one person that thinks that someone is funny. It's crazy. So, or one person to 10 people that could say that this person is funny. So it's just as subjective as, most art forms that get us to feel something, right, are very subjective. Well, art in general, I guess, it's very subjective. So I think for her to get to that point and then saying like, so basically her comments elicited some, of course, very big responses.
Plus the fact that she's already canceled. So there's a lack of empathy that
it's already a lack of empathy with that. So I think some people said on X, tearing up about having to shop at H&M when conversing with someone who in the same conversation talked about getting evicted and being on food stamps. And
so the context behind that is her friend, because you don't know about this, her friend said that she was a little upset that she was struggling and she watched I think B-Simone like help other people, and she was like, I'm supposed
The
to
girl that was on the couch.
yeah.
Wow.
So she said she had to get out of her own way and her own feelings when it came to that. So that's why like that came up about that she was like really going through some hard times, and B-Simone really wasn't like looking out for her like that.
So the person still, so someone else wrote, most of us shop at H&M. You know, most of us live check to check. That's life. I can rock a Walmart fit with confidence because it's in you, not on you. Another added, the real root is materialism. That there's the part of the heart God is trying to show you to fix. You don't need certain brands to be cool. And then another person wrote, oh my God, get a grip. I've been shopping at H&M for most of my life, and it's really not life or death like that. A third. And I think another thing, it's we're kind of we're in a weird time right now, right? Where there's so many people that value the dollar and just put people on, you know, they are the experts because they are worth, you know, so much money.
Yeah.
And then there's people that devalue the dollar, right? Like it's kind of one of the things like, I'm not gonna feel sorry for you. So for her, if she's feeling economic strife in her life, if they're seeing her possibly doing this podcast from her home, you know, on a couch, and it's a beautiful backdrop,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, girl, you know, where people are just, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay their rent.
Yeah.
And you have a mortgage. And even though there are still strife and like Biggie said, more money, more problems, that can be a real thing too. I think it's just a little harder. The wealth gap has just become so significant. It keeps widening in this country that it's a little harder for people that are without to really feel the pain of those with. And because she's made statements in the past that have been deemed insensitive, I think it's just kind of like tone and timing is everything. And I think we're not doing enough of that because, again, like I said, I love big, beautiful brains. We're not taking the time to just stop and think before we say something. We're just like, okay, this is how, and then we're like, oh, why did I get canceled? It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
Thinking about it first. And then of course there was several comments on the clip we showed you on YouTube where people were like, you talking about shopping and some people don't have food.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard having struggles, but if H&M is where you live to shop, you're still blessed, love. Take it from someone who is struggling also. Another person goes, there are people who are struggling to buy food and pay their rent, and she bugging out having to shop at H&M. And then I'll just read one more. I don't feel bad for her at all. She didn't want to see her friends winning unless she was winning bigger, and now she wants everybody to rally around her. She admitted to cutting ties with people who she didn't feel were on her level, and now she's going through it. Karma is a B. Her friend's car was getting repossessed, and she's worried about what stores she can or cannot shop at. Pathetic.
Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't go that hard, but
I mean, they went in the paint on that one.
I'll say that she's just not going to get the sympathy from the people because of the fact that it's it's yeah, like you said about the recession, people are struggling. She's sitting, assuming in her house doing a podcast, still dressed really fly. And I think if you miss the context, she says that she was in Bloomingdale's, and so to me, she could still afford to buy Bloomingdale stuff. She just opted to say, "Oh, adult decision is to not spend my last little bit on Bloomingdale's and H&M."
And the reason she said H&M too is like, because as an entertainer, she gets invited to events. In her mind, it's like, it also shows you there's levels to this, right? There are people that are, you know, maybe that are within that entertainment sphere or that influencer sphere, right? That have stylists that are getting pieces for them.
Yeah.
So they go out the house, somebody has laid out the whole outfit and it's all designer, everything. And maybe she has to still, there's certain things she just, whatever she is bringing in independently, because let's also remember, even though she has a team of 5 that probably help make brand partnerships and those types of deals for her, she's still an independent creator.
Yeah.
You know, Wild 'N Out's not on anymore, so it's not like she's on that every week. And, you know, unless she's working towards trying to get series or things like that where she can be more visible, it's kind of that's another thing where I think
So you gotta do the new hustle, the podcast game. That's the new hustle.
podcasts are hard too.
Yeah,
So
no.
it's not like an easy hustle either. Like it's
But even then, right? Like who set up like she got the same mics as us.
yeah.
So I know how much those cost. Like she probably has a podcast producer who's a camera person. I know someone's operating the camera, like who's making the
Yeah,
digital
because it is
content.
beautiful.
So it's still like there's lighting. I could tell that she's lit.
She's lit well.
So she's not broke. She's so I think that the tears do come off disingenuous because you're saying I can't afford a Bloomingdale lifestyle. I have to settle for an H&M lifestyle while you're still obviously investing in projects and investing in things. So I think that's a little like you're not going to garner, like I said, sympathy because there's too many other factors that we can see that aren't lining up. You know what I mean? Like I
I
said,
think it's also because the friend called her out on I think that it could be so many factors that led to the emotion. Like, dang girl, why you won't call me out on this podcast? Now, yesterday I had to put down, that Gucci chain in Bloomies.
and she still has jewelry too.
That she could sell.
Yeah, you can sell a jewelry and then reinvest that into something like it's fashion isn't everything. H&M, you can get some dope pieces, and you can Walmart, you can what it was.
I mean, H&M was doing campaigns with high fashion models because of the fact that they do collabs just like Gap and these other like people. The thing that's so funny because somebody recently, I'm gonna say it on here, a friend of mine dissed the Gap, and I was like, "Have you seen their collabs though?
Yeah.
Like they're doing some dope partnerships where it's not the jeans from the 80s and 90s, and even then, like Gap has always been a solid American
Yeah, what are you supposed to
brand.
wear if you can't wear Gap now? Like, are you supposed to only wear like high end, like
Well, also this
LV,
friend too.
Gucci? Like,
I was kind of like, like Max is your friend. So it's kind of like, which is nothing,
yeah,
those are brand names that go into those stores as
yeah.
well. But it's kind of like, I don't know. I just, is for me, I am led by how the clothes look on someone. Like if I see it on, styled on a model online and the fit looks tight,
The man make up the suit.
I'm like, wow. I'm still that person. I'm that traditional person that sees it on like, I want to wear it like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm still that person that gets drawn in that way. So I do think that is, and I know what I like and when I see something I like, I know what I like. But there was funny. I saw an H&M campaign. It was funny when I saw this. There was an H&M campaign I saw the other day, and I was like, "Well, they got some nice." I used to always shop there, so I now I don't do as much physical shopping. So I'm trying to be a little bit more selective in my older age where I used to have clothes. Like I remember it would take me forever to know what I was going to wear because I would just have so much. And I had to learn that sometimes access isn't always a good thing too. It's kind of also having the staple pieces and then maybe building from there. And that's what I've been trying to do with having to reform my wardrobe.
Yeah.
So I do think that's there's a lesson in everything, but I just think it could have been a better way to say things.
I think that's what
the reason she's trending.
I think that's, I mean, it could have been one or two ways. She either purposely said this knowing it was going to get clipped and she's engagement farming, or she really just struggled with saying things. And because there's a way that she could explain that her income drastically decreased and could have been a teachable moment for people who are also in entertainment who want to get into entertainment. But to take a shot at H&M or something that could be perceived as a shot at H&M, wow, like you said, like your friend would made fun of Gap, and I'm like, damn, I got Gap sweats right in the
I love so. I mean,
damn.
yeah. I was insulted because I was like, I got Gap stuff. Like I was kind of like,
right? Like,
I mean, they're like Swedish designers they've collabed with recently. There's so many different designers that they're collabing with, and I just thought that was unnecessary.
Yeah, so so she's saying this
And
about
it was
H&M.
weird for her to say it too. Like I feel like Gap's been just different ever since the Yeezy collab. It's just continued to make these huge collab. They did Cult Gia not too long ago, which is a very big Gen Z brand.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just was kind of like, okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So there's somebody who's wearing H&M that heard this clip and it was like, man, F this chick.
And
Like,
she ended up trending as a
yeah.
result. I mean, she's not like high up there, but she high enough
Yeah, of course.
where it's kind of, I stopped and was like, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I wouldn't have went there. You know, like I said, she could have explained because she's not even broke. She could have explained that her financial situation changed, but it seems like she's going for the victim role, you know, and she wants people to see her as a victim, and it's like it's always hard to be a victim, especially when in context of the conversation when you say you were making like $1 million a month and you want people to see you as a victim. You have to be able to have, she needs a little bit more self-awareness, I think, at the very
Oh,
least.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like the angry black woman comment.
Yeah, just like the angry, like you know, so it's either lack of self-awareness or inability to phrase things correctly, you know. So, and I think that's what one of the issues I think she had with Pretty V, who they were like best friends. I don't know if they still aren't no more. At least in the social media space, they were really good friends. And you know they're not friends. As there was a time where they wasn't close because I think the way she addressed something or said something, it went a little too far. And I think it was on Girls Cruise. So you know, once again, right, like not being able to articulate yourself in the best way, I think has tarnished her brand somewhat. You know, but yeah, yeah, I ain't got much else to say about this.
No, no.
Just took a
It
shot.
was wild.